So just to say that we could have started anywhere. I mean, if any text we would have chosen, we could have moved along the rhizome, along the web of connectivity of formulas, of discourses. The connections are not chance. They have a meaning. So we could have chosen anything, meaning that we're talking about formulas. So we're going to look at the strict meanings of Buddha Vachana, which is very carefully coded statements that tell us a lot. If we learn to listen to a formula like the one I quoted, it's telling us a lot about the early Buddhist, at least it's the imagination. And through the imagination, something about the reality, but there's a translation act involved there. So there are these strict meanings, but there are also very loose meanings of Buddha Vachana, because it seems that these textual practices are very liberal. So we're going to look at at textuality along the spectrum. And here, Alexander von Rospach and the Pali class's decision to read the text from the Vacchagoza cycle I suggested. I gave a few options. This is the cycle about the unanswered questions, the Abhyakatas questions, or ditthis, the views. So this had a pretty strong impact. We're going to be working through this more philosophical material to pick up the theme of the play of formulas. And then, since we're in philosophy and maybe meditation already, it will be easier, and also in the Samyutta actually, it will be easier to take another step towards this connection between text and meditation. So I'll want to say something about the play of formulas as a meditative phenomenon, not only as a theory of text, which is what I've expressed in my book. Okay, yeah, so I now also, mainly thinking of you, Bob, I was thinking of doing something a little more philosophical. So the play of formulas, it's a theory that says that discourses are not an attempt to preserve the Buddha's word. This is the most straightforward argument, and I could just start telling you stories, maybe I'll tell a couple later. And discourses are also not a report of historical instances, and formulas are not mere mnemonic elements. Formulas are suggestive and expressive, and they're aesthetic devices, no less, and they also have a mnemonic function to them. I mean, all these sides of literature could be true, but they've been given too much voice in Buddhist studies. Everybody says everywhere that the texts are an attempt to preserve the Buddha's words. In a sense, that's the only real argument I'm making in the book. So their discourses may preserve historical materials, and they care for the Buddha's philosophy. And actually, I think, though, that maybe I'm more historicist than everybody, because once we give the precedence to formulas over the full text, then we can start saying maybe some of these formulas go back to the Buddha, or at least they go very early. We'll never know. That at least could be argued, and I think that's a serious argument here that allows us to take in a more kind of fluid approach to early Buddhist history. We can achieve a reconstruction of early Buddhism as a cultural system, as a religious system, as a philosophical system that kind of lasted over the maybe centuries of composition of the discourses, more or less, not pinpointing events, but we can zoom in on the early tradition, maybe very early. That's at least a possibility that emerges here. So just to say something about the kind of scholarly context I'm involved with. So, I mean, I've been finding more and more materials and people like Rhys Davids or Oldenburg who really appreciated the formulas, who saw the formulas as like the basic materials. And I'm going back to this older scholarship and beginning to pick up cues from there. And I'm pretty much becoming more explicitly and consciously against the comparative project crowned by Analayo's work, and especially by the essentialist assumptions behind it, the historicist assumptions behind it. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago at the Koroshti Club, and I'll probably be writing about this in the future. I won't really be writing about this today. But the main idea is that texts are versions. Texts are always versions, and they're legitimate compositions within their own cultural and historical context. And the differences are maybe even more valuable than the shared materials. And what's shared is not strong enough to be a core Ur text. And also, I mean, there's more because everybody's comparing and going back to the sources. So more and more voices are saying that the texts are the Buddha's word again. And that's just like, it's simplistic. And I mean, we don't need to go back to the romantic days of earlier generations of scholarship. And we can retain the critical insights expressed by people like Chopin or Collins, among the most kind of powerful critiques. But then again, we can now maybe move forward and with this new methodology of formulas, maybe learn something more about the early tradition. And the person who really has done the most impressive work in my mind on the early materials is Mark Allen. And Mark inclines more in a conservative direction and thinks that texts were really meant to be learned by heart and recited. And I'm sure that that's part of the picture, but we have a kind of ongoing debate how much creativity is involved. And I mean, I think he's already shifted a degree in my direction, and we'll probably meet somewhere in the middle. So yeah, okay, so I've said this, we're working up from formulas to text rather than down from discourses, and carefully listening to formulas in order to grasp the thought world of early Buddhism. Okay, so basically this is it. To summarize like this introduction, this is composing a discourse, replace the formulas with Lego pieces, and just like these kids are having a good enough time, I mean, I don't know if we have formulas for deer in in Buddhist texts. That would have been nice, whatever they're playing with there. But the basic idea is that the units, once you get the right units, any building you make of Lego is good enough. And so what we have recorded is almost chance. I mean, it's good texts that were chosen and survived. Okay, so as I said, the Pali class wanted to read these texts on the unanswered question, and so I'm going to now lead you. By the way, Bob or anyone, I mean, I think there are like a few stages here, and I can stop. But so